"I can't close my legs," she cried. When the Apache looked down, he found a terrifying truth. The desert was quiet that evening. The sun was slowly going down behind the red mountains of Arizona. The sky was turning orange and gold, and the wind moved softly across the sand. Small clouds of dust drifted across the dry land. A lone rider moved across the desert trail. His name was Dakota, an Apache tracker known for his calm mind and sharp eyes. He rode a brown horse named Spirit, a strong and loyal animal that had traveled many miles beside him. Dakota knew the desert very well. Every rock, every cactus, and every sound told him something. He had learned from a young age that the desert could be peaceful, but it could also hide many surprises. That evening felt calm, but something in the air made Dakota alert. Spirit suddenly slowed down. Dakota gently pulled the reins and looked around. The desert stretched wide and empty in every direction. Tall cacti stood like silent guards over the land. Then he heard something, a voice. At first it was faint, carried by the wind. Then it came again, a woman's voice. "Please help." Dakota quickly turned his head toward the sound. The voice came again, louder this time and filled with fear. "I can't close my legs." Dakota's eyes narrowed with concern. He lightly tapped Spirit's side, and the horse began moving faster across the sandy ground. Dakota followed the direction of the voice carefully, listening for any other sound around him. The desert was never as empty as it looked. Sometimes danger could hide where no one expected it. As Dakota rode closer, he saw something moving near a group of rocks. It was a woman. She stood very still in the middle of the sandy ground. Her travel dress was dusty, and her hat had fallen beside her boots. Her hands were slightly raised, and her face showed pure panic. Dakota slowed Spirit and carefully approached. The woman noticed him and looked both relieved and terrified at the same time. "Don't move," she cried quickly. "Please, just don't come too fast." Dakota stopped his horse about 20 feet away. His calm eyes studied the situation. The woman stood with her legs slightly apart, as if she was frozen in place. Her body trembled, but she did not move even an inch. Dakota slowly got off his horse. Spirit stayed quiet behind him. The Apache tracker walked forward slowly, placing each step carefully in the sand. His movements were calm and steady, like someone who understood that panic could make things worse. The woman swallowed nervously. "I can't close my legs," she said again, her voice shaking. "If I move, I think something bad will happen." Dakota did not laugh or show surprise. Instead, he watched the ground carefully. The desert floor was covered with soft sand and small stones. To most people it looked ordinary, but Dakota had the eyes of a tracker. He noticed the marks immediately. There were strange lines in the sand near the woman's boots. Thin, curved lines. His expression became serious. "What is your name?" Dakota asked calmly. "Clara," the woman replied quickly. "My name is Clara Whitmore." Dakota nodded slowly. "My name is Dakota," he said. Clara's breathing was fast. "I was traveling to the town of Red Ridge," she explained nervously. "My horse got scared and ran away. Then I heard something near my feet, and when I looked down, her voice trembled. I was too scared to move." Dakota carefully stepped a little closer, but he kept his distance. "Good," he said quietly. Clara blinked in confusion. "Good?" she asked. Dakota nodded. "You did the right thing by staying still." The wind moved across the desert again, carrying grains of sand across the ground. Clara looked at him with wide eyes. "What is it?" she whispered. Dakota did not answer right away. Instead, he slowly bent his knees and leaned forward slightly, studying the ground between Clara's boots. The marks in the sand were clearer now. The curved trail, the soft coil shape. Dakota understood what might be there, but he needed to be certain. Clara felt sweat on her forehead as she watched him. "Please tell me what it is," she said quietly. Dakota raised one hand calmly. "Do not move," he said gently. Even the wind seemed to stop. The desert became completely silent. Dakota slowly leaned forward and looked directly down at the space between Clara's feet. And when he finally saw the truth hidden in the sand, his eyes became sharp with focus. Because what rested there was something the desert was famous for. Something small, something silent, and something that could change everything with just one sudden movement. Dakota took a slow breath. The desert was silent. Dakota stayed very still as he looked down at the ground between Clara's boots. The soft sand had small curves and marks, like something had slowly moved across it. Clara stood frozen. Her legs were still slightly apart, exactly as they had been when Dakota arrived. Her hands were shaking, but she tried her best not to move. The sun was almost touching the mountains now, and the light was turning red and soft. Dakota finally saw it clearly. Between Clara's boots, half hidden in the sand, was a small rattlesnake. Its body was curled into a tight coil. Its color mixed perfectly with the sand, which made it very hard to see. The snake was not moving much. Its head rested quietly on top of its body, and its small tail was slightly raised. Dakota knew the desert well. Rattlesnakes did not always attack. Most of the time, they only reacted when they felt danger. If Clara suddenly moved her legs, the snake might feel trapped. That could cause trouble. Dakota slowly lifted his head and looked at Clara. Now he understood everything. "You did the right thing," he said calmly. Clara blinked. "There is something there, isn't there?" she whispered. Dakota nodded slowly. "Yes." Clara's face turned pale. "A snake?" she asked. "Yes," Dakota said gently. "A small rattlesnake." Clara's eyes grew wide, but she still did not move. "I knew it," she whispered nervously. "I heard something moving near my feet, and when I looked down I saw it." Dakota raised one hand calmly. "Do not panic," he said. "The snake is calm." "That is good." Clara swallowed. "How can it be calm?" she asked quietly. Dakota glanced at the snake again. "It does not feel threatened," he explained. "You stayed still. That helped." The wind moved softly across the sand again. A small cloud of dust drifted across the ground, but the snake did not move. Dakota thought carefully. He needed to solve the problem without making the snake feel trapped. The desert had taught him something important. Rushing could create danger. Clara spoke again, her voice shaking. "My legs are getting tired," she said quietly. Dakota nodded. "I know," he replied. "But you must stay still a little longer." Clara closed her eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. "I will try." Dakota looked around the ground slowly. He searched for something that could help him move the snake away safely. Near a rock, he noticed a long, dry stick lying in the sand. It was thin but strong enough. Dakota slowly walked toward it. Every step he took was careful. He made sure his feet did not shake the ground too much. Clara watched him nervously. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Dakota picked up the stick. "I will guide the snake away," he said calmly. Clara looked worried. "Is that safe?" Dakota gave a small smile. "For the snake, yes. For us, also yes." He walked back slowly. Spirit, his horse, stood quietly behind them. The horse seemed to understand that something important was happening because it did not make a sound. Dakota stopped a few feet away from Clara. The rattlesnake was still resting between her boots. Dakota studied the snake carefully. The snake lifted its head slightly. Its tongue moved quickly in the air, tasting the scent around it. But it still did not feel threatened. That was good. Dakota slowly lowered the stick toward the sand. "Clara," he said softly. "Yes," she answered quickly. "When I move the snake, it may slide across the sand." Clara's breathing became fast again. "Will it come toward me?" she asked. Dakota shook his head. "No, I will guide it away." Clara nodded slowly. "I trust you." Dakota moved the stick slowly through the sand. He did not touch the snake yet. Instead, he gently moved the sand near it. The rattlesnake lifted its head higher now. Its small eyes watched the moving stick. The snake began to slowly turn its body. Dakota stayed calm. He gently placed the tip of the stick near the snake's side. Then he carefully guided the snake toward the open desert. The snake slowly uncoiled. Clara felt her heart beating fast. She watched every movement. The rattlesnake slid across the sand, moving slowly away from her boots. Dakota continued guiding it carefully. The snake moved farther and farther away. But Clara still did not move. She waited. Dakota kept watching the snake closely, because in the desert, Even a small mistake could change everything. And the rattlesnake had not completely left yet. The most important moment was still coming. The desert was still quiet. Dakota kept his eyes on a rattlesnake as it slowly moved across the sand. The long stick in his hand stayed steady. He did not rush, and he did not make any sudden movements. Clara was still standing in the same place. Her legs were tired, and her muscles felt stiff, but she did not move. She remembered Dakota's words. Staying calm was the safest thing she could do. The rattlesnake slid slowly through the sand. Its body moved in smooth curves, leaving thin lines behind it. Dakota gently guided it farther away from Clara. The sun was now very low in the sky. The desert light had turned soft and orange, and long shadows stretched across the ground. Clara watched carefully. "Is it going away?" she asked quietly. Dakota did not look at her yet. "Almost," he said calmly. The snake stopped for a moment and lifted its head slightly. Its small tongue flicked in and out of its mouth as it sensed the air. Dakota stayed completely still. He knew something important about desert animals. If they felt chased, they could become nervous. But if they felt free to leave, they would usually go their own way. So Dakota waited. The snake slowly turned again and began sliding toward a small group of dry bushes a few feet away. Dakota gently moved the stick once more, guiding the direction of the snake's path. The stick never touched the snake harshly. It only helped direct its movement. Clara watched every second. Her heart was beating fast, but she was also amazed at how calm Dakota was. It was like he understood the desert better than anyone she had ever met. The rattlesnake continued moving. Little by little, it reached the bushes. Then its body disappeared slowly between the dry branches. Dakota waited a few more seconds. He listened carefully. The desert wind moved softly again, and the bushes rustled slightly. But the snake did not come back out. Dakota slowly lowered the stick. Then he looked at Clara. "You may move now," he said gently. For a moment, Clara did not move at all. She was still afraid the snake might suddenly return. "Are you sure?" she asked quietly. Dakota nodded. "Yes, it has gone." Clara slowly brought her legs together. Her knees shook a little after standing still for so long. She took one careful step back. Nothing happened. The snake stayed hidden in the bushes. Clara let out a deep breath she had been holding for what felt like forever. "Oh, my goodness," she said softly. She placed a hand over her chest, feeling her heartbeat slowly calming down. Dakota placed the stick back on the ground. Spirit, his horse, quietly stepped closer as if checking that everything was safe. Clara looked at Dakota with relief. "You saved me," she said. Dakota shook his head gently. "You saved yourself," he replied. Clara looked confused. "How?" she asked. Dakota gave a small smile. "You stayed calm." Clara thought about that. At first she had been terrified, but something inside her had told her not to move when she saw the snake. If she had panicked and jumped away, things might have become worse. The desert wind moved softly through the tall cacti nearby. The evening air was becoming cooler now. Clara picked up her hat from the ground and dusted the sand off it. "I was traveling to Red Ridge," she explained. "My horse ran away earlier. I was trying to walk the rest of the way when this happened." Dakota listened carefully. Red Ridge was a small town not too far from where they were standing. "You cannot walk there alone at night," Dakota said. Clara looked around the desert. The open land suddenly felt much larger now that the sun was almost gone. "You're right," she admitted. Dakota gently held Spirit's reins. "My horse can carry 2 people," he said. Clara looked surprised. "You would do that for me?" Dakota nodded once. The desert is safer when people help each other. Clara smiled for the first time since the frightening moment began. "Thank you, Dakota." Dakota helped her climb onto the horse. Then he stepped up behind her and took the reins. Spirit began walking slowly across the desert trail. The sky above them was now deep orange and purple as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. Clara looked back once toward the small bushes where the snake had gone. The desert had given her a frightening moment, but it had also given her something else, a lesson she would never forget. And as Dakota guided the horse toward the distant lights of Red Ridge, the night slowly spread across the desert. Dakota guided Spirit along the narrow trail as the last light of the sun disappeared behind the mountains. The sky above them turned dark blue, and the first stars began to shine. The desert felt different at night. It was cooler and quieter, but it was also mysterious. Soft winds moved through the tall cacti, and far away a night bird called into the darkness. Clara sat carefully on the horse in front of Dakota. She held the saddle tightly, still thinking about what had happened earlier. Only a short time ago, she had been standing in the sand, too scared to move. Now she was riding safely across the desert. She looked up at the stars. "They're beautiful," she said softly. Dakota nodded. "The desert sky is always clear," he said. "You can see many stars here." Clara smiled. She had traveled through many towns before, but she had never noticed a night sky like this. After a few minutes of quiet riding, Clara spoke again. "I'm very lucky you found me," she said. Dakota shook his head gently. "The desert brought us together," he replied. Clara laughed a little. "That sounds like something a storyteller would say." Dakota smiled quietly. The trail slowly curved around a group of large rocks. In the distance, small lights began to appear. Red Ridge. The town was not very big, but it was a safe place for travelers. A few houses stood near the road, and a small saloon and general store sat near the center town. The warm glow of lanterns welcomed anyone arriving at night. Clara felt relief when she saw the lights. "We're almost there," she said happily. Dakota guided Spirit down the last part of the trail. Soon the horses' hooves were walking along the dusty street of Red Ridge. A few townspeople were still outside finishing their evening work. One man closed the door of the general store, while another tied his horse near the saloon. They looked curiously at the two travelers arriving together. Dakota stopped Spirit near the town's small boarding house. Clara carefully climbed down from the horse. Her legs were still a little stiff, but she was finally able to stand normally again. She looked at Dakota with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. Dakota calmly tied Spirit to a wooden post outside the building. "You are safe," he said. "That is enough." Clara thought for a moment. Then she smiled. "Well, maybe I can thank you another way." Dakota looked at her. "How?" Clara adjusted her hat and spoke proudly. "I'm a writer," she explained. "I travel from place to place collecting stories about the Wild West." Dakota listened quietly. Clara continued. "Today the desert gave me one of the most unforgettable stories of my life." Dakota chuckled softly. "The story of the snake?" Clara nodded. "Yes, but also the story of the man who stayed calm when everyone else would panic." Dakota shook his head. "The desert teaches patience," he said. Clara thought about that. "You're right," she replied. "I was terrified, but if I had panicked, things could have gone very differently." The boarding house door opened, and warm light spilled onto the wooden porch. Clara turned back to Dakota. "Will you stay in town tonight?" she asked. Dakota looked toward the dark desert beyond the town. "The desert is my home," he said. Clara smiled gently. "Well, if you ever pass through Red Ridge again, I hope you visit." Dakota nodded. Then Clara suddenly had an idea. "Wait," she said. She opened her small travel bag and took out a notebook and pencil. "Before you go, may I write your name?" Dakota raised an eyebrow. "For your story?" Clara nodded. "Yes." Dakota thought for a moment. Then he gave a small smile. "Dakota," he said. Clara carefully wrote the name into her notebook. "One day," she said, "people might read this story and learn the same lesson I did." Dakota looked at the quiet street of Red Ridge. "And what lesson is that?" he asked. Clara closed her notebook and smiled. "That sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is simply stay calm." Dakota nodded in agreement. He untied Spirit and climbed back onto the horse. The desert wind moved softly through the quiet town. Clara watched as Dakota rode slowly away toward the open desert. The moon had risen now, lighting the wide land with a silver glow. Soon Dakota and Spirit became small shapes in the distance. Clara held her notebook tightly. She knew she would never forget this night, because sometimes the greatest adventures were not about fighting or danger. Sometimes they were about courage, patience, and the quiet wisdom of the desert. And somewhere under the endless desert sky,